My dad gave me disowned papers on my birthday. Can you imagine that? The one day you're supposed to feel celebrated, loved, valued, and instead you're handed a legal document that erases you from the family. Not a card, not a gift, just cold black ink on white paper that says you're nothing to them anymore. I stood there trembling, staring at my father's signature at the bottom. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the papers. My mother wouldn't even look at me. My sister, the golden child, smiled, actually smiled. I want to tell you this story because maybe some of you have felt invisible too. Maybe you've been the one nobody believed in. So if this resonates with you, please hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment below telling me your story. I read every single one because unlike my family, I see you, I hear you. Now let me take you back to where it all started. The morning of my 23rd birthday, I woke up with this strange feeling in my chest. Not excitement, not dread, just emptiness. I'd spent the last 5 years working my way through community college while waitressing nights at Romano's, a mid-tier Italian restaurant where the tips were decent but the customers were worse. I lived in a cramped studio apartment on the bad side of town because that's all I could afford. My phone was 2 generations old. My car made a grinding noise every time I hit the brakes. But I was proud I was surviving on my own. My family hadn't spoken to me in 3 years, not since I refused to drop out of school to help fund my sister Caroline's wedding. That's right. They wanted me to sacrifice my education so she could have a $10,000 dress and a destination ceremony in Napa Valley. When I said no, my dad called me selfish. My mom said I was ungrateful. Caroline said I was jealous. Maybe I should have seen the disownment coming. But some part of me, stupid, naive, hopeful, thought that maybe, just maybe, they'd reach out on my birthday, a text, a voicemail, anything. Instead, at 9:47 a.m., there was a knock on my door. I opened it to find a courier holding a manila envelope. "Amber Castellano," he asked. "That's me." He handed me the envelope, made me sign for it, and left without another word. I stood there in my doorway, barefoot in an oversized t-shirt, staring at the return address. Castellano Family Trust. My father's law office. My stomach dropped. I closed the door, sat down on my thrift store couch, and opened the envelope with shaking hands. The document inside was titled, Notice of Disownment and Severance of Family Ties. I read it 3 times before the words actually sank in. Effective immediately, Amber Marie Castellano is hereby removed from the Castellano family estate, trust, and inheritance. All legal and financial ties are severed. She is no longer recognized as a daughter or beneficiary. There were 2 signatures at the bottom. My father's and my mother's. I didn't cry, I think I was too shocked to cry. I just sat there numb, holding the paper like it was going to disintegrate in my hands. They'd actually done it, they'd erased me. I didn't go to work that day. I called in sick, which I never did, and spent the entire morning staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of my childhood, trying to figure out where I went wrong. Was it because I wasn't pretty like Caroline? She had the blonde hair, the blue eyes, the pageant smile. I was the brunette with the sharp jaw and the resting face that people said made me look intense. Was it because I wasn't obedient? Caroline never questioned them. She did what they wanted, married who they wanted, became who they wanted. I wanted more, I wanted my own life. And apparently, that was unforgivable. By noon, I'd made a decision. I wasn't going to let this destroy me. I got up, showered, put on the nicest clothes I owned, a simple black blouse and gray slacks I'd bought at a clearance sale, and decided I was going to treat myself to lunch. Just me, no family, no drama. I went to a small cafe downtown, ordered a sandwich I couldn't really afford, and sat by the window watching people pass by. Everyone looked so normal, so unbothered. I wondered if any of them had family that loved them, if any of them knew what it felt like to be thrown away. I was halfway through my sandwich when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Hello. Is this Amber Castellano?" a woman's voice asked, professional, polite. "Yes." "This is Julia Romano, executive assistant to CEO Dominic Kane of Kane Industries." Mr. Kane would like to request a meeting with you this afternoon if you're available. I blinked. I'm sorry, what? Mr. Kane saw your application and portfolio in our recent internship program submissions. He'd like to speak with you personally. Would 3 p.m. work? I sat up straight, my heart suddenly pounding. Yes, 3 p.m. works. Wonderful, I'll send you the address. Please bring a copy of your resume. She hung up. I stared at my phone, confused, exhilarated, terrified. Kane Industries, one of the biggest tech and investment firms on the West Coast. I'd submitted an application on a whim 2 months ago, never expecting to hear anything back. And now the CEO wanted to meet me. On the worst day of my life. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. At 2:45 p.m., I stood outside the sleek glass tower that housed Kane Industries, clutching my worn leather portfolio and trying not to visibly shake. The building was intimidating, all steel and glass and sharp angles. People in tailored suits moved in and out of the lobby like they owned the world. I felt so small. But I walked in anyway. The receptionist checked my name, handed me a visitor badge, and directed me to the executive floor. I rode the elevator up in silence, watching the city shrink below me through the glass walls. When the doors opened, I stepped into a pristine hallway lined with modern art and floor-to-ceiling windows. A woman in a crisp navy dress approached me. Amber. Yes. I'm Julia, thank you for coming on such short notice. Mr. Kane is ready for you. She led me down the hall to a large office at the end. She knocked once, then opened the door. Mr. Kane, Amber Castellano is here. Send her in. Julia stepped aside and I walked into the office. It was massive, minimalist, expensive. A huge desk sat near the windows and behind it stood a man in a dark gray suit, mid-30s, with sharp features and piercing blue eyes. Dominic Kane. He looked up from his tablet and smiled. Amber, thank you for coming. I swallowed. Of course, thank you for inviting me. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. Please sit. I sat, placing my portfolio on my lap, trying to look calm even though my heart was racing. Dominic leaned back in his chair, studying me. I've been reviewing applications for our new strategic development internship. Yours stood out. It did. You're a non-traditional student. You've worked full-time while attending school. You have real-world experience in customer service, problem-solving, crisis management. That's rare. Most applicants have degrees and no substance. I didn't know what to say. I just did what I had to do. Exactly, he leaned forward. That's what I'm looking for, someone who doesn't give up, someone who fights. I felt a lump forming in my throat. He had no idea how much I needed to hear that today. I'd like to offer you the internship, he said, paid full-time starting next week. I stared at him. You're serious? Completely. But why me? There have to be hundreds of applicants. There were thousands, he interrupted, but none of them had your story. I froze. My story. He slid a printed document across the desk. It was my application essay. I'd written about growing up in a family that didn't value education, about working 3 jobs to pay for school, about being told I'd never amount to anything. I'd poured my heart into that essay because I thought no one would read it. But he had. You wrote that you wanted to prove that success isn't about where you come from, Dominic said quietly. It's about where you're going. I believe that, and I want to give you the chance to prove it. My hands were shaking again, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was from hope. I don't know what to say, I whispered. Say yes. I looked up at him, and for the first time all day, I smiled. Yes. I left Kane Industries in a daze. I had a job, a real job, with a salary that was more than I made in 3 months at the restaurant. I wanted to call someone, to share the news, to celebrate. But I had no one. My family had disowned me that morning. I didn't have close friends. I'd been too busy working and studying to build relationships. So I sat on a bench outside the building and just breathed. For the first time in years, I felt like maybe, just maybe, things were going to be okay. I pulled out my phone and looked at the disownment papers I'd photographed earlier. Then I deleted the photo. I didn't need to carry that anymore. The next week moved fast. I gave my 2 weeks' notice at Romano's. My manager was sad to see me go but congratulated me. I packed up my tiny apartment, gave notice to my landlord, and prepared to start my new life. Kane Industries provided relocation assistance. They set me up in a small but modern apartment closer to the office. It wasn't huge, but it was mine, clean, safe, quiet. On my first day, Julia gave me a tour, introduced me to the team, and handed me my new ID badge. I stared at it. Amber Castellano, Strategic Development Intern, Kane Industries. It felt surreal. The work was challenging. I was thrown into market research, financial analysis, client presentations. I worked late nights, asked a million questions, took notes on everything. Dominic checked in on me regularly. He was demanding but fair. He pushed me but never made me feel small. For the first time in my life, I felt valued. 3 weeks in, I was sitting in a conference room preparing slides for a pitch meeting when Julia poked her head in. Amber, Mr. Kane wants to see you. My stomach flipped. Did I do something wrong? She smiled. No, just go. I walked to his office, knocked, and entered. Dominic was standing by the window, hands in his pockets, looking out over the city. You wanted to see me? I asked. He turned. How are you adjusting? Good, really good. The team's been great. I've been hearing good things about you. He walked over to his desk and picked up a folder. I want to talk to you about something. Okay. He handed me the folder. I'm working on a new acquisition, a family-owned manufacturing company. They're struggling financially, but they have potential. I need someone to do deep research, financials, history, leadership. I want to know everything. I opened the folder, and my blood went cold. The company name on the front page, Castellano Manufacturing LLC. My father's company. I looked up at Dominic, my heart pounding. You're acquiring my father's company. His eyes widened slightly. Your father owns this. I nodded, unable to speak. He studied me for a long moment. I didn't know that wasn't in your file. I don't use his name anymore, not really. Dominic's expression softened. If this is a conflict of interest. It's not, I said quickly. I haven't spoken to him in years. He disowned me. Dominic went still. What? The day you called me, the day of my interview, that morning he sent me disownment papers. The room was silent. Dominic's jaw tightened. I'm sorry. Don't be. I looked down at the folder. If you're really acquiring his company, I want to help. He raised an eyebrow. You're sure? I met his eyes. I'm sure. He nodded slowly. All right, then let's do this. Over the next 2 weeks, I dove into my father's company records. And what I found was worse than I imagined. Mismanagement, debt, fraud. My father had been cooking the books for years, hiding losses, lying to investors. Caroline's husband, who worked as CFO, was in on it too. They were sinking fast. And they were desperate. I compiled everything into a report and presented it to Dominic. He read it in silence, his expression unreadable. Finally, he looked up. This is damning. I know. If we move forward with the acquisition, your father loses everything. I swallowed. I know. And you're okay with that? I thought about the disownment papers, the years of being told I wasn't good enough, the birthday that should have been mine. Yes, I said, I'm okay with that. Dominic smiled. Then let's make the offer. 1 week later, I stood in the lobby of Kane Industries waiting. My father and Caroline were coming in for the final negotiation meeting. They had no idea I worked here. They had no idea I was the one who'd uncovered everything. Julia approached me. They're here. I nodded. I'm ready. The elevator doors opened. And my father stepped out. He looked older, tired, stressed. Caroline was beside him, her face tight with worry. They walked toward the conference room, not even glancing in my direction. But then Dominic's voice echoed through the lobby. Amber, we're ready for you. I stepped forward. My father froze. He turned slowly, his face going pale. Amber. I smiled. Hi, Dad. Caroline's mouth fell open. What are you doing here? I held up my badge. I work here. My father's eyes widened in horror. And that's when Dominic walked up beside me, his hand resting lightly on my shoulder. Shall we begin? He said smoothly. The conference room felt like a courtroom. My father sat on one side of the long glass table, Caroline beside him, both of them stiff and pale. Their lawyer, some overpriced guy in a suit that probably cost more than my rent, sat next to Caroline, shuffling papers like he could somehow save them. On our side sat Dominic at the head of the table, his lead counsel Margaret to his right, and me directly across from my father. I watched him stare at me like I was a ghost. Amber, he said again, his voice hoarse, what is this? Dominic didn't give me a chance to answer. He leaned forward, fingers steepled, his expression calm and controlled. Mr. Castellano, thank you for coming. I believe you know why you're here. My father tore his eyes away from me and looked at Dominic. You said you wanted to discuss an acquisition offer. That's correct. Dominic slid a bound document across the table. Kane Industries is prepared to acquire Castellano Manufacturing. The terms are outlined here. My father picked up the document with shaking hands. His lawyer leaned in, scanning the pages quickly. I watched Caroline's face go from confused to horrified as she read over their shoulders. This is, my father's voice cracked, this is a fraction of what the company is worth. No, Dominic said coolly, it's a fraction of what you claimed the company as worth. Our due diligence reveals a different picture. Margaret opened her own folder and slid a stack of documents across the table. Falsified revenue reports, hidden debt, 3 years of cooked books. Your company isn't worth what you've been telling investors, Mr. Castellano. In fact, you're approximately $8 million in debt. The room went silent. My father's face turned red. That's not. It is, I said quietly. Everyone turned to look at me. My father's eyes met mine and I saw something flicker there. Panic, realization. He breathed, you did this. I did my job, I said evenly. I analyzed your company, I found the truth. You betrayed your own family, Caroline snapped, her voice shrill. I looked at her and for the first time in my life I didn't feel small in her presence. You disowned me, remember, I'm not family anymore, you made sure of that. She opened her mouth but no sound came out. Dominic continued, unbothered. The offer stands. We acquire the company, absorb the debt, and you walk away with enough to cover your personal assets. Or, he leaned back, we walk away and you deal with your creditors on your own. I believe 3 of them are preparing to file lawsuits. My father looked like he was going to be sick. His lawyer whispered something to him. My father shook his head, then whispered back. They went back and forth for a minute before my father finally looked up. I need time to think. You have 72 hours, Dominic said. After that, the offer expires. My father stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. Caroline scrambled to follow him. Their lawyer gathered the papers, looking flustered. My father paused at the door and turned back to look at me. For a moment, I thought he might apologize, that he might say something, anything that acknowledged what he'd done. But instead, he just said, I don't know who you are anymore. I stood up, meeting his gaze. Good, because the girl you disowned isn't who I am anymore either. He flinched like I'd slapped him. Then he turned and walked out. Caroline shot me one last venomous look before following him. The door closed. The room was silent. Margaret let out a low whistle. Well, that was dramatic. I sank back into my chair, my hands trembling. I hadn't realized how tense I'd been until it was over. Dominic looked at me. You okay? I nodded even though I wasn't sure. Yeah, I'm okay. You handled that well. Did I? I laughed weakly. I feel like I just blew up my entire life. You already didn't have them in your life, he said gently. You just made them face the consequences of their choices. I looked up at him. Why are you doing this, helping me? I mean, you didn't have to offer me this job, you didn't have to put me on this project. Dominic was quiet for a moment, then he said, because I know what it's like to be underestimated, to have people think you'll never be anything because of where you came from. He paused. and I know what it's like to prove them wrong. I studied him. I realized I didn't actually know much about Dominic's past. He was always so composed, so in control. I'd never thought about what it took for him to get here. "Thank you," I said softly. He nodded. "Come on, let's get out of here. You've earned a break." That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the meeting in my head, the look on my father's face, Caroline's anger, the way my father said he didn't know who I was anymore. Good, I thought, because I didn't want to be the girl who begged for their approval anymore. But it still hurt. Around midnight my phone buzzed. I picked it up expecting a work email. Instead, it was a text from an unknown number. "You're going to regret this." My stomach dropped. I stared at the message, my heart racing, then another one came through. "You think you've won, but you have no idea what you've started." I sat up in bed, my hands shaking. Was this my father, Caroline? I almost blocked the number, but then a third message appeared. "Watch your back, little sister. Caroline." I threw my phone onto the bed and pressed my palms against my eyes, trying to steady my breathing. She was trying to scare me. And it was working. But I wasn't going to back down. The next morning, I walked into the office determined to focus on work and ignore Caroline's threats. But when I got to my desk, I found a small envelope sitting on my keyboard. No name, no return address. I opened it carefully. Inside was a single note, handwritten in elegant script. "Some secrets are better left buried. Walk away now or everyone will know what you really are." My blood ran cold. What I really am, what did that even mean? I looked around the office, but everything seemed normal. People typing, talking on phones, sipping coffee. Who left this? I shoved the note into my bag and tried to focus on my work, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. At lunch, I met up with Jo. Aya in the break room. She was one of the few people in the office I'd started to consider a friend. "You look stressed," she said, handing me a coffee. "Just family stuff," I said vaguely. "The Castellano acquisition." I nodded. She gave me a sympathetic look. "That must be so weird working on your own family's company." "It's complicated." "I bet." She paused. "Hey, I don't know if this is my place, but be careful, okay?" I frowned. "What do you mean?" She glanced around, then lowered her voice. "There's been some weird stuff happening. Someone tried to access your employee file last week. It flagged it." My heart skipped. "What, who?" "They don't know. It was done remotely from outside the building. They shut it down before anyone got in, but," she shrugged, "just thought you should know." I felt sick. "Did you tell Dominic?" "Security did. I'm sure he knows." I thanked her and left the break room, my mind racing. Someone was digging into my past. But why? That afternoon, I was called into Dominic's office. He was standing by the window again, looking tense. "Close the door," he said. I did, my stomach nodding. "Is something wrong?" He turned to face me. "I received a call this morning from your father." I froze. "What did he say?" "He's threatening to go public, to claim that you fabricated the financial reports out of revenge." My mouth went dry. "That's insane. I didn't fabricate anything." "I know." Dominic's voice was calm but firm. "I've seen the evidence. It's airtight, but he's desperate, and desperate people do reckless things." "What do we do?" "We move forward. We don't let him intimidate us." He paused. "But Amber, if this goes public, it's going to get ugly. The media will dig into your history. Your family will say things about you. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about the disownment papers, the threatening texts, the note on my desk. I thought about every time my family made me feel worthless. And I realized something. I wasn't afraid anymore. "Yes," I said, "I'm prepared." Dominic studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "All right, then we fight." 2 days later, my father held a press conference. I watched it from my apartment, my stomach in knots. He stood behind a podium, looking somber and dignified, with Caroline beside him playing the role of supportive daughter. "I'm here today to address false allegations made against my company," he began. Kane Industries, led by CEO Dominic Kane, has launched a hostile takeover attempt based on fraudulent reports compiled by a former employee, my daughter, Amber Castellano. My chest tightened. Amber has held a grudge against our family for years. When she didn't get her way, she cut ties with us. And now she's using her position at Kane Industries to fabricate evidence and destroy the company I built with my own hands. He paused, his voice breaking slightly. As a father, this betrayal is devastating, but as a businessman, I will not stand by and let lies destroy everything I've worked for. The camera flashed to Caroline, who dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. I felt nauseous. He was lying, painting himself as the victim, and people were going to believe him. My phone buzzed. It was Dominic. Don't engage, let me handle this. I wanted to scream, to defend myself, to tell the world the truth. But I forced myself to stay quiet. The next morning, Dominic held his own press conference. I watched from the office conference room with Margaret and Julia. Dominic stood calm and composed in front of a dozen reporters. Yesterday, Mr. Castellano made serious accusations against Kane Industries and one of our employees. I'm here to set the record straight. He gestured to a screen behind him where a document appeared. This is an independent audit conducted by Foster & Lowe, one of the most reputable accounting firms in the country. They reviewed Castellano Manufacturing's financials and confirmed what our internal team discovered: years of falsified records, hidden debts, and fraudulent reporting. The room erupted in whispers. Dominic continued, Mr. Castellano is not a victim, he's a man trying to avoid accountability, and his attempt to discredit his own daughter to save himself is, frankly, despicable. He looked directly into the camera. Amber Castellano is a talented, dedicated professional. She did her job with integrity, and I will not allow her to be slandered. I felt tears prick my eyes. He didn't have to defend me like that. But he did. Within hours, the media turned on my father. Articles appeared questioning his credibility, investors started pulling out, creditors accelerated their lawsuits. Castellano Manufacturing was collapsing. And my father had no one to blame but himself. 3 days later, my father signed the acquisition papers. He had no choice. I wasn't at the signing. Dominic thought it was best if I kept my distance, but he called me right after. It's done, he said, the company is ours. I exhaled, feeling a strange mix of relief and sadness. How did he seem? Defeated. I closed my eyes. Good. There was a pause, then Dominic said, Amber, there's something else. What? Your father left something for you, an envelope. He asked me to give it to you. My heart clenched. What is it? I don't know, I didn't open it. Do you want me to send it over? I hesitated. Yes, please. The envelope arrived an hour later via courier. I sat on my couch, staring at it for a long time before I finally opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter. Amber, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I deserve forgiveness, but I need you to know the truth. When you were born, I was terrified. I didn't know how to be a father. Your mother wanted perfection, and I wanted to give her that. When Caroline came along, she was everything we thought we wanted: easy, obedient, beautiful. You were different. You questioned everything. You challenged me, and I didn't know how to handle that, so I pushed you away. I told myself you were the problem, that you were selfish, ungrateful, difficult. But the truth is, I was the problem. I was the one who couldn't see your worth. You were always stronger than me, smarter, braver, and I resented you for it. I'm sorry for the disownment papers. I'm sorry for everything. I know it's too late, but I needed you to know. You deserved better. Dad. I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it was something. That night, I was getting ready for bed when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello. Amber Castellano, a man's voice, professional. Yes. This is Detective Ryan Morrison with the Lapped. I need to speak with you about your sister, Caroline Castellano. My blood went cold. What about her? She's been arrested. I sat down slowly. For what? Embezzlement, fraud. We've been investigating her and her husband for the past 6 months. Your father's company collapse accelerated our case. He paused. We're going to need you to come in and answer some questions. Questions about what? About what you know and about this. He texted me a photo. It was the note that had been left on my desk. Some secrets are better left buried. We found evidence that your sister has been attempting to intimidate you, possibly to stop you from uncovering more about her involvement in the fraud. We need your testimony. I stared at the photo, my mind reeling. Caroline, it was always Caroline. I'll come in, I said quietly. Thank you, we'll be in touch. He hung up. I sat there in the dark, trying to process everything. My father was broken, Caroline was in jail, the company was gone. And I was still standing. But just when I thought it was over, I received one final message. One that would change everything. The message came at 2:47 a.m. I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep after the detective's call when my phone lit up. Unknown number again. But this time it wasn't a threat. There's something you need to know about your mother. Meet me at Riverside Park tomorrow, 10 a.m. Bench near the fountain. Come alone. A friend. I sat up, my heart pounding. My mother, the one person who'd been silent through all of this, who'd signed the disownment papers without a word, who hadn't defended me, hadn't reached out, hadn't done anything. What could there possibly be to know about her? I knew I shouldn't go. It could be a trap. It could be Caroline trying to lure me somewhere. But I had to know. At 9:55 a.m., I stood near the entrance of Riverside Park, scanning the area. It was a crisp morning, joggers passed by, a woman walked her dog, everything looked normal. I made my way to the fountain and spotted the bench. Someone was already sitting there. A woman, maybe in her 60s, with silver hair pulled into a neat bun. She wore a long coat and held a purse in her lap. As I approached, she looked up. And I froze. I knew her face. I'd seen it before in old photographs my father kept in his study. Aunt Margaret, I whispered. She smiled sadly. Hello, Amber. Margaret Castellano, my father's older sister, the one the family never talked about, the one who'd disappeared from family photos after some unspoken falling out decades ago. I sat down slowly, my mind racing. What are you doing here? I've been keeping tabs on you, she said gently, for years, ever since you were a little girl. Why? She looked out at the fountain, her expression distant. Because I made a promise to your real mother. The world tilted. My what? Margaret turned to face me, her eyes filled with something like sorrow. Evelyn isn't your biological mother, Amber, she never was. I couldn't breathe. That's impossible. I wish it were. She reached into her purse and pulled out an old, faded envelope. Your real mother's name was Diana Torres. She worked as a nurse at the hospital. Where your father's company used to have their medical contracts. They had an affair. My hands were shaking as I took the envelope. Inside were photographs. A young woman with dark hair and warm brown eyes holding a baby wrapped in a yellow blanket. The baby had a tiny birthmark on her left shoulder. I had that same birthmark. That's me, I breathed. Yes, Margaret's voice was soft. Diana was kind, smart, passionate, everything Evelyn wasn't. Your father fell in love with her, but when she got pregnant, he panicked. He was already married, he had a reputation to protect. So what happened? Margaret's face darkened. He paid her off, gave her money to disappear, but Diana refused to give you up. She wanted to raise you herself. She paused. Then 3 months after you were born, she was killed in a car accident. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. What? The police ruled it an accident, but Diana's family always suspected your father had something to do with it. They could never prove anything, though. Margaret's eyes glistened. After she died, your father brought you home, told Evelyn he'd had an affair and that the baby you were his responsibility. Evelyn agreed to raise you as her own, but only on one condition. What condition? That no one could ever know the truth, that you would be treated as legitimate. But she sighed. Evelyn resented you from the moment you entered that house. You were a living reminder of your father's betrayal, and when Caroline was born 2 years later, Evelyn's biological daughter, you became the outsider. Tears were streaming down my face. They knew, they always knew. Yes. Everything made sense now. The way my mother looked at me with cold eyes, the way she favored Caroline in every possible way, the way my father couldn't meet my gaze. I wasn't just the difficult daughter. I was the mistake. Why didn't anyone tell me? I whispered. Your father forbade it, and after Diana died, her family wanted nothing to do with the Castellanos. I tried to stay in your life, but your father cut me off, said I was causing trouble. Margaret reached out and took my hand. But I never stopped watching over you. I made a promise to Diana that I would make sure you were okay. I looked down at the photographs, at my mother's face, my real mother's face, and felt a grief so deep it was almost unbearable. Did she love me? More than anything, Margaret said, her voice breaking. She used to tell me that you were her miracle, her greatest gift. I sobbed. For the mother I never knew, for the lies I'd been fed my entire life, for the family that was never really mine. Margaret wrapped her arms around me and held me while I cried. When I finally calmed down, I pulled back and wiped my face. Does my father know you're telling me this? No, and he won't unless you want him to. I thought about the letter he'd sent me, the apology, the admission of guilt. He'd been sorry for pushing me away. But he'd never told me the truth. I need proof, I said. If I'm going to confront him, I need proof. Margaret nodded. I have Diana's journals, medical records, birth certificate, everything. She handed me a business card. This is my address. Come by tonight, I'll give you everything. I took the card, my hand still trembling. Thank you. Diana would be so proud of you, Margaret said softly. You're exactly who she hoped you'd become. I went straight to Dominic's office. He looked up when I walked in, immediately noticing my red eyes. Amber, what's wrong? I closed the door and sat down. I need to tell you something. And I told him everything, about Margaret, about Diana, about the lies. Dominic listened in silence, his expression growing darker with every word. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. My God. I don't know what to do, I admitted. Part of me wants to confront him, to make him admit it, but part of me just wants to walk away and never look back. Dominic studied me. What do you want, Amber? Not what you think you should do. What do you actually want? I thought about it. I thought about the disownment papers, the press conference, the years of being made to feel like I wasn't enough. I want the truth to matter, I said finally. I want people to know who Diana was. I want her to be remembered. Dominic nodded. Then let's make that happen. That night I went to Margaret's house. It was a small, cozy home filled with books and photographs. She led me to her living room and handed me a box. Inside were Diana's journals spanning 3 years, medical records confirming my birth, letters she'd written to Margaret. I spent hours reading them. Diana had been a dreamer. She wrote about wanting to travel, to help people, to make a difference. She wrote about falling in love with my father despite knowing it was wrong. She wrote about me, about how much she loved me, how she couldn't wait to watch me grow up. And then the entry stopped. The last one was dated 2 days before her death. Amber smiled at me today, a real smile. I know everyone says babies that young don't really smile, but I swear she did. She's going to be strong, I can already tell. Whatever happens, I hope she knows how much I love her. I closed the journal and pressed it to my chest, sobbing. Margaret sat beside me. She never got to see the woman you became, but I know she would have been so proud. I'm going to tell the truth, I said, my voice steady despite the tears. I'm going to make sure everyone knows what happened. Margaret smiled. Then I'll stand beside you. 1 week later, I held my own press conference. Dominic stood beside me, along with Margaret and the lawyer we'd hired. The room was packed with reporters, cameras, flashing lights. I took a deep breath and stepped up to the microphone. My name is Amber Castellano, and I'm here to tell you the truth about my family. I told them everything. About Diana Torres, the woman who gave birth to me, about the affair, about the accident that was never properly investigated, about being raised by a woman who resented me and a father who could never look me in the eye. I told them about the disownment, the threats, the lies. And I told them about Diana's dream to help people to make the world better. In her honor, I said, my voice strong, I'm establishing the Diana Tours Foundation. It will provide scholarships to nursing students from underserved communities. It will support women who are struggling to raise children on their own, and it will make sure that my mother's name is never forgotten. The room erupted in questions, but I didn't answer them. I'd said what I needed to say. The fallout was immediate. My father released a statement denying everything, but the evidence was overwhelming. Medical records, birth certificates, testimonies from Diana's family. The media tore him apart. Evelyn filed for divorce. Caroline, already facing embezzlement charges, released a statement distancing herself from the family. The Castellano name, once powerful and respected, was in ruins. And I felt nothing but relief. 3 months later, I stood in the lobby of Kane Industries, looking at the plaque on the wall. Diana Tours Memorial Scholarship Fund, established by Amber Tours. I'd legally changed my last name. I was no longer a Castellano. I was a Tours. My mother's daughter. Dominic walked up beside me. It looks good. It does, I agreed. I have something for you, he said, handing me a folder. I opened it. Inside was a promotion letter. Strategic Development Manager, Kane Industries. I looked up at him, stunned. Are you serious? You've earned it, he said simply. You're brilliant, Amber, and I want you on my senior team. Tears filled my eyes. Thank you for everything. You don't have to thank me, you did this yourself. That night, I returned to my apartment, no longer the cramped studio, but a real one-bedroom with a view of the city. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat by the window, looking out at the lights. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Margaret. Diana would be so proud. I know I am. Love you, sweetheart. I smiled and typed back. Love you too, Aunt Margaret. I set my phone down and picked up one of Diana's journals, running my fingers over the worn cover. I did it, Mom, I whispered. I made something of myself just like you wanted. For the first time in my life, I felt whole. I wasn't the girl who was disowned on her birthday anymore. I was the woman who rose from the ashes. I was Amber Tours. And I was finally home. 6 months later, epilogue. I stood on the stage of a university auditorium, looking out at 200 students gathered for the first Diana Tours Foundation scholarship ceremony. 20 students were receiving full scholarships that night. 20 young people who would now have the chance to pursue their dreams. Just like my mother had wanted for me. As I handed out the awards, I saw their faces, hopeful, grateful, determined. I saw myself in them. After the ceremony, a young woman approached me. She had dark hair and bright eyes, and she clutched her scholarship certificate like it was made of gold. Thank you, she said, her voice shaking. You have no idea what this means to me. I smiled. I think I do. She hugged me and I held her tight. This was what mattered. Not revenge, not proving my father wrong. But building something good, something lasting, something that honored the woman who gave me life. As I left the auditorium that night, I found Dominic waiting by the car. You were amazing up there, he said. Thank you for coming. Of course, he paused, then said, Can I ask you something? Sure. Are you happy? I thought about it, really thought about it. I thought about the girl who'd opened disownment papers on her birthday, broken and alone. And I thought about the woman I'd become, strong, purposeful, surrounded by people who valued her. Yes, I said softly, I'm happy. Dominic smiled. Good, because you deserve it. We got into the car, and as we drove through the city, I looked out at the lights and thought about how far I'd come. My father had tried to erase me. Instead, he'd set me free. And I'd built a life more beautiful than anything he could have given me. Thank you for following Amber's journey. If her story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe for more powerful stories. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever been underestimated? How did you prove them wrong? I read every single comment and your stories inspire me. Remember, you are not defined by the family you're born into. You're defined by the person you choose to become. Until next time, Red.